Welcome to the Love Your Inner Athlete podcast, your go-to source for all things mental fitness in sports. Whether you're an athlete, coach, or parent, you will learn as you join us to dive into inspiring conversations with those who have worked to develop their mental fitness. You will hear from people who have put in the work as either an athlete, coach, or a parent. In each episode, we bring you discussions and expert insights on developing resilience, focus, and mindset. Discover the concepts of mental fitness and learn how to use it to create consistent, durable confidence in both sports and life. I'm your host, Hans Schulstad. Let's get started. Welcome to the Love Your Inner Athlete podcast. Today, we're excited and thrilled to have the guest of Mike Gibbons, a longtime friend, been on the speaking circuit with him at level 4 USA hockey clinics. He's coached hockey at every level, youth, high school, college, junior, and even some pro, Gibby.
Yeah, American Hockey League. Does that count as pro?
Yeah, that counts as pro.
Okay.
Most recently, he's been a coach at Bemidji State. And when I talked to him the other day about getting him on here, he was like, I got nothing to do because I'm retired and he wants to stay retired. So great to have you on, Gibby. Just want to jump in with a couple of questions and we'll get things rolling and you can tell me your perspectives. So first question I have for you is, you've seen me present numerous times, both to teams and at USA hockey coaching clinics. What is it you like the most about the presentations that you've attended?
Well, the first time I heard you speak to me, it was eye-opening. It was really stimulated my thought on, am I doing things right? I've been in the business a long time, and mental fitness, mental strength, that's some complicated stuff. And so it really, for me, it just stimulated thought on how to become a better coach.
Okay. Do you feel like it made you a better coach, the things that you learned?
Absolutely. I mean, this is the 21st century. So there's so much to coaching that is very, very complicated. The mental aspect is probably the most complicated. There's really nothing black and white. Hockey coaching, power plays, breakouts, penalty killing, skating style, that's black and white stuff. Mental strength, mental fitness, that's not even a science. It's way more an art, and it's stimulating, exciting, new horizon.
Yeah, very true. So one of the things that I was curious about is, there's been times where we've had friends, coaches, or athletes in common where I've known the athlete in some way and you've coached them or a coach. What kind of feedback did you get from coaches and players that listened to my message?
Well, I think a lot of coaches and some players, I would say more coaches than players, is sometimes there's reluctance to change on their part. They're fearful that they might be losing control on their team or how to coach their team. So sometimes there's hesitancy. They don't want to admit that what they've been doing for all these years might be wrong. So sometimes, there's sometimes hesitancy on accepting the newness of it all. And, you see that with especially some of the old coaches. They've been doing things their way for hundreds of years, it seems. And I think the really good coaches are the ones that are always looking for change, always looking for something good. They're the ones that are going to be more receptive to what you have to say.
Can you give me an example of a time where there's something that I taught you or shared with you that helped you with a player?
Plenty of times. I mean, it's like...
You don't need to share names or anything like that.
No, I know. I think that, sometimes you might have a natural reaction to respond to a player in a certain way, maybe more aggressive way. And you have to understand that every single athlete is different and unique. And there's no textbook on how to coach and coaching would be easy if there was a simple textbook that you wrote on how to coach, how to make your players stronger, because what works for one kid might be life-changing for another kid. It might be life-harming for another kid. I mean, there's just so much to it. It's very complicated, actually.
Do you feel like the things you've seen me share or present about simplifies it?
Absolutely. It gives you a better understanding. And like I talked about before, it stimulates your thoughts. It opens your eyes to how athletes respond, how different athletes respond to the same stimuli. There's definitely, you definitely see it where some coaches have a personality or a way about them where some athletes can just thrive under that style, where others might not be as responsive to that style of coach. And because everyone is going to be unique. So you have to be able to actually coach every player in a unique way, which is very hard to do, because a lot of times you think this is the way our team is going to react. Well, that's, if they were all robots, that would be a perfect way to respond. But there are uniqueness in every single athlete.
When I've presented or you've seen me present, what were the things that held your attention?
Everything. But I think the biggest thing is understanding the differences in every athlete. And, I think a lot of old school guys, and I'll put myself in the old school, they like the idea of being strong and being tough and being aggressive. And, that might work for some kids, but also, there's some times where what you're doing might not be very effective. And in fact, it is very harmful to the kid, not only to the kid, but to your team. And so you really have to treat every individual individually. And that's the complicated part of it.
When you look back at the time we've spent together, can you tell me about a shift you've made in yourself from what you learned from me?
Just that maybe you have to think sometimes before you respond to every situation. And a good example is after a tough loss, I think there's so much emotion involved in really hard losses. And, I think a lot of coaches might respond with anger and, kicking a trash can, so to speak, and pointing their finger at their team and, calling them this and calling them that. And, sometimes a team does need a kick in the butt, and they do need a strong coach, but you really be hesitant to sometimes all that emotion after a game is freight with real pitfalls to your team. And can be some serious scarring going on that you have to be real cautious. You can't let emotions overtake your coaching style, and, count to 10, talk to the team in the morning, rationalize your thoughts, cool down, have a beer and relax, and then think about things. And the next morning, it might not seem so life changing. Now you can talk more rationally about everything. So almost literally count to 10 before you respond. And you can't respond with emotion. Sometimes emotion is good and real, but you have to proceed with caution along those lines.
Okay. So whether you knew it or not, there's been several times where we've had athletes in common. And one of the things they've raved about you is your ability to build relationships with them. Can you tell me about your secret in doing that?
Well, again, it was part of your style, part of your presentation is, in today's world, you have to connect with kids, and someone on your staff has to connect you. If you're this old style coach and you have this wall in front of you, how are you going to reach your kids? Just by your pep talks and you literally have to. Today's athlete, they need someone to talk to, and not only about what to do on the power play and what to do, on a 3-on-2 rush or how to defend a 2-on-1 rush, but where are they in their lives right now? And so how do you connect? Well, you better connect every day. Every chance you can, you better be able to talk to those guys. And, a lot of that talk needs to center around them, not about what you want them to do on the power play. How are they doing? What's going on? Is there a divorce going on in their life? Is there some mental health issues that they don't even know about? You have to be able to get inside. You have to open up. And again, in today's world, you better have someone on your staff that connects with athletes. And I think the only way you can do that, you need to talk to them every day about something and find something to talk to them about, to connect with them, and not always about the power play and how they're playing. How are they doing? How are things in your life? How's school going? How's your girlfriend? Again, being an older guy back in the day, if someone talked to you about, if a player ever mentioned, I'm starting to lose my confidence, it's like, well, whatever, see you later. I mean, you don't have any confidence, you can't play this sport. Now, Sidney Crosby will talk all the time about the importance of confidence, and he's one of the best players in the world. That's the one thing I discovered is confidence is talked about by these kids all the time, and their lack of confidence and their struggle with confidence and how to play with a little more confidence. And And that's something that, you need to work on it on every single player that you have with their confidence. You have to gain their confidence. You have to improve their confidence in play, that they belong on the team, that they're good players, that they're appreciated, that you care about them as a person, and not just as a, I'm going to become super coach by making an impact on you. No, you care about what they're doing. You want to make an impact on their lives. You want to make changes in their lives that can impact them for the rest of their lives.
So when's the first year that you started coaching?
1902. No, it was 1982. I was assistant at Bemidji State, making $1,800. Is that a lot of money back then?
Well, I don't know, Gibby. I was 10 years old, so I had no concept for money then. But tell me, in your experience, what have you seen change in the players you coach?
Everything. We talked about confidence, the resiliency, the toughness of players. They're fragile right now. I was a high school teacher in between all my college stints, and boy, I realized that those high school kids have a lot of stress in their lives, more than when I grew up. When I grew up, in the summertime, you'd see a mom and you'd be out the door. Nowadays, even the summertime is regimented, and they're all trying to get in good schools, or they're all trying to make the varsity hockey team and get their college scholarship and become a pro, and all these kinds of stresses. So there's an awful lot of stress in their lives, and you need to be able to address that and talk about that. And a friend, a coach, a confidant, someone that they can listen to. Sometimes it's just them talking. I was coaching the American Hockey League, and our defensive staff had all NHL players that were either, a couple guys played like 10 years in the NHL, because some of them were on their way to the NHL. And here I am, I'm coaching them, and I played in the minors in the East Coast Hockey League, and I'm coaching NHLers. And I really discovered that those guys wanted more to have someone to talk to, as much as they wanted to tell them what they needed to do, on how to defend a 2-on-1 rush or your style of coaching. They just needed to bounce some of their thoughts off. And that's when I really learned that it's more important to connect with them than even to share your expertise in hockey. So a lot of youth coaches or young coaches, you might not have 42 years experience like we have, or I have, but you know what? You can connect with a player and you can become their friend, and still have their respect by caring about them, talking about their lives and their game. I remember one time I was recruited by a coach, and, I thought I was a really good defenseman. And what really struck me is when I coach, I really liked your game, but there's a bunch of things that I think I can improve. I can make your game better. And it's like, I'm going to play for this guy because he's going to make me better. He's already picked out a couple different things. And a player, whether they like it or are going to admit it or not, they are the most important persons in their lives, and they care about their game and their life, and they want to hear about their game and how you can help them become a better player. And not only better player, but again, a stronger player, but mentally tougher player.
Who would you say your most influential coaching figures are, mentors are?
Well, you know what? Like when I'm putting together this evaluation or this presentation, I've been coaching for 42 years, and I've worked with some of the great coaches out there. Bob Peters, started with Bob Peters, legendary coach at Bemidji State. Last couple of years with Tom Serratori and Travis Winters. Rick Comley, Hall of Fame coach at Northern Michigan. Walt Kyle was Northern Michigan, Anaheim Ducks. Brad Butow at Colorado College. Bob Motzko for 13 years, and Brett Larson for a couple. I worked with John Hines with the World Junior. So you're talking about legendary coaches, Hall of Fame coaches, and current great coaches. And, what I got out of working with all these guys is, man, they're driven coaches, all of them. And some of them they're all great coaches. But, to what we're talking about here, I guarantee you that they've done things that have harmed players emotionally, just because they really didn't understand mental fitness a little bit. And, my point with that is, if someone's listening to this presentation and they don't have 42 years coaching with Hall of Fame coaches, what makes you think that, you know more about mental strength and mental fitness than some of the things that you want to present to these guys? And I think they got to understand that, This is all new stuff. I think that the 21st century, the great studies in coaching is going to be on how to tap the power of the mind, and not on, some revolutionary power play, or how defensemen are more involved in the rush. It's going to be mental fitness, mental toughness, mental strength, how to harness the power of the brain, because I don't think we've touched the surface of what we can get. But back to your question, my first coach I ever had was Bob Peters at Bemidji State, and he was a Hall of Fame. He's a legendary coach and a legendary person, and he knew an awful lot about all the fundamentals of coaching, and he was the best. And I think he was the best in my mind because he had more passion than any of these guys. And you're talking about Bob Motzko and John Hines and Brett Larson, Walt Kyle. These guys are Brad Buto, intense competitors. But Bob Peters, he loved the game more than any of these guys. And he lived it more than any of these guys. And I think that's what made him a really good coach.
When you look back at your career, first question is, do you see consistency and mental fitness as related to one another? And does consistency make a difference on how much you play?
Absolutely, because it's and that's the hard part of being an athlete is sustaining a high level consistently. Because again, I remember trying out for the New York Rangers in one training camp exhibition game. I was like a young Bobby Orr, maybe not Bobby Orr, but I was really good. But I couldn't sustain that. I mean, that's the best I could ever play. That's the challenge, is to try and maintain that high level. And I don't know, for me, it would be impossible. But yes, there are guys that can throw together. Back in the thousands of athletes that I coached, that they can play good for a stretch, but sometimes that consistent play is a real challenge for them. And that's definitely related to the brain and to their mental capacity. So maintaining a high level is very difficult. And that's where you come in, and that's where your systems come in, because you can just say, well, it's just the biorhythms are right that day and everything fit into place. And I just had a great game. And I'm going to, sometimes they're going to think that it's superstitious, and they're going to, so they're going to tie their skates the same way. It's like, no.
Superstition.
You need to be able to find a way to prepare yourself that you can play at a high level consistently. And it's not going to happen by some guys. I've had a couple of players that this is the way they play. They play good every single game. I can think of a couple of guys in particular that, John Lazat, at 5'7", still playing, never played in the minor leagues. He's still LA Kings right out of college. That sucker just plays good every night. And maybe you should do a case study with him, because you can get all your guys to play that consistent, every single practice, every single game. But that's the exception. That's the challenge. Not everyone has that gift that he has, where he just comes to play every night. And that's where your group comes in, where we're working on these guys to play it, see if we can get them to play at a high level consistently.
Have you ever coached a team that overachieved because they were more mentally fit?
Absolutely. You hear coaches talk all the time. These guys are champions. They know they don't get excited. They can respond to adversity in the right way. They're going to show up for the big games. It's kind of like teams are very much like an individual, that some of them are just mentally stronger. Some of them are more prepared, whether it's the leadership or a good core of guys. Some are just born to overachieve, or born to play hard every night, or born to play really good in the big games. And then you have other teams, other players, big game shows up. Again, my 42 years, I could name some names that were great during the regular season. Come playoff time, they were not good for whatever reason. We could do a study, I guess, Hans. Let's get these guys and look inside their brains and see why. They're not playing good during those big games. And others, man, they just live for those big games.
You answered my next question, which was if you've ever seen teams underachieve because they weren't mentally prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that has to do with leadership, the importance of leadership, positive leadership. There are teams where this leader, this alpha male, might not like the head coach, or he might not like his situation. And a single guy can take an entire team on the wrong road. And especially when it gets tough. everyone's going to want to win, but once it gets tough or really tight, they don't have the ability to come out of that. And I think leadership with your group is about as critical as there is. You just need some strong leaders, and that's kind of what again your group talks about is how do we develop these leaders? Because you want to look at even NHL leadership. I mean, those guys have all kinds of experience, but they haven't had leadership roles. You want to get to college or high school, some of those kids, here's my captain, he's a natural leader. Well, is he? And is he going to be doing everything correctly as a leader? And that's where we found that coaches really had to guide these really strong captains on how to lead. Jimmy Schultz was a guy at St. Cloud State that maybe as good a captain as I've ever seen in my lifetime. And he was a captain for 3 years. And here's a guy that was basically recruited by us in Michigan Tech. And he wasn't a high recruit, but because of his character, because he was a natural leader, naturally tough, he literally was runner-up to the Hobie Baker, and he lost it to Cale Makar, pretty good guy to lose the Hobie Baker to. And the reason was of his mental toughness. And I bring him up because even though he was as good a leader as there was, he needed guidance. He needed the experience of Bob Mosko's experience, Garrett Boynes, myself, Brett Larson coached him for a year. We need to talk to him about leadership style and timing because you think coaching's hard. Well, being a captain of a team is also not an easy thing to do. And they need some guidance too from the staff.
As a player, how much time do you think total you got on the how, or how much detailed coaching did you get on the how about how to stay calm or how to perform under pressure?
Not a lot.
Not enough?
Not enough for sure. Absolutely.
Would you be surprised to hear that when I do presentations and ask that question in my feedback forms, that 75% of kids in the last 10 years have said they get an hour or less of detailed coaching on mental performance? Okay. Right. Why do you think coaches are so afraid to teach it or don't?
Just because it's new. And again, they don't understand it. I was impressed with you, Hans. We were somewhere and I started just doing audibles as a recruiter. It's like you drive for hours and you don't always have cell service. And I just thought, started reading all these kinds of books, and you flashed up about 100 books on mental toughness. And it's like, so here, this is your life, this is your profession. And how many books have you read on that? Just audible books, you've had 100. So I think that's very complicated. I think some coaches are intimidated by it and also maybe hesitant because they don't understand what they're doing. So for them to talk about preparing for the big game, they might have a couple black and white experiences, but they don't know the science to it, to the art to it so I think they're intimidated by it and they're not knowledgeable. They don't understand, the mechanics. We talk about an art, but there is science. There's some black and whites to mental fitness too. So I think that's the biggest reason. I think that there's just lack of knowledge and lack of confidence in what they're doing. And also it's like, maybe there's a weirdness to it. Like the team might not pick up and understand what you're trying to say either. So they're thinking like, what is this guy talking about? Just give me a pep talk and let's go out there and beat these guys. So I think there's an awful lot of ignorance out there.
So I'm curious, it seems like, I don't remember how long I've known you. I think it's close to 10 years, but I remember we had an instant rapport with one another. And I also remember feeling like I could trust you and that you trusted me. Why do you think we had that right away?
Yeah, because I understand the importance of what you have to say and also the newness of it. Like I'm an old coach, but I'm going to stay on the cutting edge of everything. And right away, I instantly understood the importance of what you had to say and the importance of that, because I didn't want to be one of those coaches that was scarring players. I mean, the one thing that I've realized just since retiring is man, the impact coaches have on kids. I mean, you can leave a lasting impact on players that are going to last the rest of their lives. You can life change. You can change their lives forever in a positive way. But on the flip side of that, you can also put some scars on some of these kids that will never go away. I mean, some of these scars that a coach is going to put on these kids are as deep as as some abusive parents put on them. And you need to understand that, man, you have an awesome responsibility. So, again, the short answer, Hans, is I think you're onto something here. You're onto the future of coaching. And, I wanted to understand that. And so that's why, everything you said, I'm all ears, and I like to listen to 21st century coaches.
So, you're taking time out of your retiree day, like you could be out in the woods or doing something else with your day. Why is it that you were willing to jump on this podcast with me?
Just the importance of, we just talked about the importance of kids and the importance of coaches. And, I want to be able to help you and to help, especially Minnesota. You're basically Minnesota, to really help Minnesotans understand the importance of mental health and mental fitness. Literally, what you have to say sometimes is not only have a life changing or life lasting effect, negative or positively, sometimes it can be life or death. I mean, suicide is a very real thing in this world. And if you're working with 20 young kids, you might have someone on your team that is very fragile, and you might not get them that Division I scholarship, but you might save their lives. And there's nothing more important than our youth. And again, if coaches in Minnesota can help save a life, man, I'm all for saving lives.
So if you had an opportunity, you were running an event or a coach's clinic or working with a team, would you hire me to do a keynote, and why?
Well, of course, it's like, do you want to be on the cutting edge of coaching, or do you want to coach like they did in 1950? I think that maybe you were talking about, you want to do heart surgery the way they did in 1960 or 1970 or 1980 or even 2000, or you want to have heart surgery perform it the way they do it in 2023 or 25 or 26. You can coach the way they did in the old days, but good luck with that. I'm pulling for you. You're not going to be very effective. The kids are going to turn you off like before they even know who you are. And I don't care if you played in the NHL, coached in the NHL. If you're not coaching 21st style, you're not going to connect with these kids, and you're not going to have a good experience. And more importantly, they're not going to have a good experience. So again, let's just all wake up to the 21st century and understand the importance of what you're presenting to these people, these coaches.
So one of the things that I love about hanging out with you is Gibbyisms,
Yeah.
and the fact that you are willing to be funny. The term that my son and I remember the most from you is tick turd.
Yeah.
Can you tell me, is the humor that you use and like your Gibbyisms, first of all, what's your favorite one?
Probably tick turd. You know what a tick turd is, right?
I remember, but why don't you tell the people that are watching?
Well, it's a tick turd. If you're a tick turd, that just means you're one below fly poop on the scale. And if you're below fly poop, then, you're not very, sharp dude. But having said that, one of the things you understand is everyone has a little tick turd in them. You just can't be a total tick turd. You just can't be full of tick turd. So it's just a real descriptive term. When I think of a tick turd, I got a picture in my mind.
So the fact that you are willing to like joke around and stuff, does that mean that being a coach, that you don't have to be serious all the time?
Well, that's just my style. It's like I like to have fun, and I like to entertain, and that's my way of connecting with kids. I'll sit in the locker room before a practice, and we'll tell lighthearted jokes or lighthearted stories, and that's just my way of connecting.
I remember you got tons of stories, and I loved them. It's always fun to sit and tell stories with you and talk with you, especially at a rink. I remember watching a couple of section championship games with you at Mariucci. I think that's when I told you about Audible. It's just so fun to hear your stories and to connect with you. I mean, you're one of those guys that's salt of the earth. And I remember my son meeting you and just loving you, and you getting him a puck signed by Jimmy Schultz and a couple of guys. I think he was maybe 9 or 10, something like that. So here's my last question. What would you tell a young aspiring hockey player about what they need to do to acquire mental fitness or mental toughness?
I think you need to be educated, and read a bunch of books on it too. I think every coach has a couple books that might be their hockey Bible or their coaching Bible. And it's really not a how-to book. It's just some black and white fundamentals. But educate yourself to start. I mean, you don't. Yeah, you know what? You should be involved and hire you. But if you don't have the money or you can't do that, at least buy some books on how to understand mental toughness. It's almost this you're understanding yourself. It gives you a little more confidence in understanding on why you might respond in a certain way. So you're aware of that. You're aware of who you are as a player and a person. So educate yourself. Sign up for one of your seminars, get some books, read about it. And one book doesn't make you an expert. You've got 100. You're still 100 plus. You're still researching, and your profession's changing every year too, isn't it? I mean, you're on the cutting edge, but there's so much to do. But let's get these kids to understand the fundamentals of mental strength, mental fitness, mental toughness. Let's understand how you are. Get some kind of understanding, so then you can improve on everything.
Well, great stuff, Gibby, as always. Thanks for joining me today. And it's been great to have you on the Inner Athlete podcast. Get your wisdom of 42 years of coaching. And as a player, I didn't realize that you tried out for the Rangers. That makes sense, though.
Yeah.
You're a good player at Bemidji, and you had a lot of success there. But thanks again for coming on, and appreciate your time, and always appreciate having a chat with you. Hope to see you at a rink this year.
Good to see you. I'd love to see you at another presentation. It's been a couple of years. I'm sure we could still learn a lot more. So let me know when you're speaking around, and
I got one coming up at Bemidji State on January 10th, and that I'm sure you're not up there much, but I also am planning to do a warm-up one sometime at the beginning of January down here at least. So I'll let you know and put you on the invite list.
Let me know. I'd love to be there. Bemidji would be easy. It's a great place. Yeah. I'd love to be there.
One thing I need from you is your address. I'm going to send you a book that I wrote.
Really?
So when we're done, text me your address, and I will email you a free copy.
I like it.
Yeah.
Bye, man. Thanks, Paul.
All right. Thanks, Gibby. Have a great day.
You too. See you, Hans.
Yep, bye.